All right. Well, hey, nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Wednesday, October the 29th, 2025, and today we are live to answer your questions right here on YouTube, this time with sound. That's nice. So let's do it. I never 100% know if that song is going to play when I hit the sound button, but if you all aren't complaining that you can't hear anything and I'm just like standing there, then that's good. All right, so if you will, get your questions for today into the chat to Mike. I think the last couple times I haven't been able to get to all of them within the hour I sort of allot for this because I have to take a delivery here shortly. But if you could get those questions in to Mike, I will try and answer them here shortly. I'm going to take a few minutes just to kind of talk while you all do that, and we'll try to get to as many as I can, like usual. So yeah, get those questions in, and we're gonna knock out an ad read real quick from our friends at Farmhand. Renewal season is here, and the work you put in now is what brings members back next year. Ari Mimar, founder of Farmhand and a guest you've heard on this podcast, has worked with regenerative farmers to create a playbook that turns renewal season into a growth season. One farmer, Melanie at Shake Fork Community Farm, says they brought in $40,000 in renewals in just 2 weeks using this strategy. Now, Ari and Melanie are sharing the exact approach in a free live workshop and downloadable playbook. Watch on demand and get the playbook at farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, keep getting those questions in to Mike there in the chat, and I hope everyone is doing well. We're certainly sending our love down to those in Jamaica and Cuba and that area affected by the hurricane right now. That just the scenes coming out of there are really brutal. So yeah, we're thinking of you all, and we know a lot of those areas that have been hit are largely agricultural areas, and so we just know there's a lot of farmers that are going to be having some serious cleanup to do. So anyway, we're thinking of you all, and yeah, just know that the world's there thinking of you. And I know a lot of you don't have internet, so you probably won't be able to hear this. But anyway, that stuff is so heartbreaking. I mean, after watching what happened after Helene and all that over in North Carolina and Eastern Kentucky and like Eastern Tennessee in that area, like it's brutal stuff. So anyway, yeah, let's see, what are we up to? Well, yesterday we harvested. We're harvesting like the delivery I have to do later it's like lettuce and those sorts of things. A little bit of kale, some carrots, sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are rocking. This is the best year in terms of just like the color of the sweet potatoes and the flavor. This is the best year we've had in a while, and I swear it's that tip that I talked about because we had a little bit of a scurf issue. That tip that Jeff Poppin gave me about how to start our slips, which you can probably find that sweet potato video somewhere on the segment that we did, maybe must have been in like March or April, I would think right before we were planting sweet potatoes, but anyway, or right around when we were. But yeah, that like made a huge difference. Just the quality's great, the color is beautiful. So I'm really happy with our sweet potatoes this year. That hasn't been the case for the last couple of years. I just kept seeing the scurf creep more and more onto the potatoes. So started it last year, and then this year it just they're rocking. So and yeah, I'm seeing we've got a couple questions in here. Make sure to get your questions in, and if you want to move your question to the top too, Mike is in there in the chat. He's going to take those questions and send them to me. So if you want to move your question to the top too, or if you want to make sure that we get to it, make sure to you can do a super chat. So that also just goes to keeping this work going and growing and doing all the things. I think we'll just go ahead and jump into some of these questions. Let's see. The first one is from @Billy. Yes, really. Billy, yes, really. That's good. I think you have to say it all at once, or it doesn't quite have the same effect. But they write, soil in my raised bed is pretty compacted and needing soil organic matter. Would tilling in vermiculite and adding a hefty layer of leaves on top be sufficient for overwintering? I mean, I don't know. I guess the vermiculite could help. There's other things. Like if you have any access to compost, that would be probably the better option. I'm not sure about the vermiculite. Like that's more going to add like, I would just think there's better options out there. For me, compost is a better option. Maybe the leaves on top would help, but leaves are really slow to break down. So if you are going to do that as like a surface mulch, I may think about adding, chopping them up really, really well. Like we talked about, was that yesterday? Did we talk about leaves yesterday? I think that was yesterday. Chopping them up really well just so there's a more rapid decomposition there to add to your soil organic matter. But yeah, it's not gonna, the decompaction is probably also gonna, just take work. If you're doing that in raised, I'm assuming they're physically raised beds, like, above ground beds instead of just like semi-permanent raised beds. If that's the case, like, it's probably a lot easier for you to add just a little bit of like compost or something. That will have a more permanent effect than the vermiculite. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's where my brain goes on that. But yeah, interesting question. At Rob Road 7120 asks, how would you go about removing grass from a plot where you cannot use tarps or till too deeply? I have a 225 square foot plot in my girlfriend's yard that we will be tearing up soon. I mean, there's a few different ways of going about it. You could just mulch really heavily over top. You can mow it really low to the ground and mulch really heavily over top of it, probably putting like a cardboard down first. You can physically remove the grass. You could just literally pull the sod up if you wanted to, and then, apply some sort of raised bed mix or something right there on top. And then that way you're kind of creating your surface material that you want to grow in. That is a thing. Like I've seen people, do sod removers and then they compost that sod and then they just add it back to the garden later. That could be a lot of work, but you're talking about 225 square feet. So that's not a huge job necessarily. What else did you say about, you can't use tarps? Yeah. I mean, I would think like, if you laid some sort of mulch paper or something down off a really, really mowed grass, and then you put some sort of compost or mulch over top of that, that's one option for just like breaking into it. And yeah, I mean, there's grasses like sod is what we all kind of have to deal with eventually when we're starting gardens, right? Like we've started a lot of gardens on, pastures and stuff. So it's kind of the same thing that we're dealing with, but if it's like a lawn, you could be dealing with things like Bermuda grass. So that can be a little bit difficult. It may be worth identifying what grass you're dealing with too, because that, if it is something like Bermuda grass, it may not hurt to remove all that sod and then, put something else down in its place and then compost it or something. But yeah, you have a lot of options there. I mean, any sort of starting garden, like we did a whole video a couple years ago, just like how to start gardens and based on your situation. And so it's kind of like the Living Soil Handbook's that way too. It's just kind of a choose your own adventure, right? Just depending on what materials you have and what you want to do in that particular spot. But lots of options there. James Williams N3R writes, Hard Roots Farm here and in full support. Do you grow year round or do you take a break at planting in the late fall? We don't really grow year round, although I'm kind of enjoying growing a little bit more into deeper into the fall right now than I normally would, because I'm usually just like absolutely whooped by this point. But I feel like, we could push it a little bit more just because I'm not overdoing it, I think, or I didn't overdo it this year like I normally would. So usually we would take a little bit of a break in the fall, rely more on our storage veggies to kind of get us through, and then some like, lettuces and kales and some herbs and that sort of stuff to get us through the winter. It's not that hard once you have a tunnel to kind of flip to a more 4-season strategy. It's just kind of, for us, it can be a bit more of a personal choice because we have, other income that we can rely on over the winter and not have to work out in the cold. And I think one of the challenges with farming in the winter, in our experience, is, just the cold washing and packing is brutal, and the frozen lines. And unless you have the right infrastructure for that side of things, it can be pretty tough. It's not that hard to grow though. Like if you can get your gardens planted up in the fall, and get past that last little bit of pest pressure that you're going into the fall, say for aphids, which are all winter, it's just harvesting is really all it is. So it's pretty easy in that way. It's just whether or not you want to do it and whether or not you have the infrastructure for managing it or delivering and all the stuff, like maybe a 4-wheel drive car, depending on where you are, or vehicle. So yeah, I mean, we don't so much. We do kind of take a little bit of a break. and we don't plant that much. My next planting will probably be in December of lettuces that I hope to harvest in March. And then after that, it will be about January before I really plant anything else. And that'll be the first round of carrots. And last year I did radishes, but they came in a little bit too early. So I'm going to have to push them back a little bit. So that'll be more like late January, early February before I'm planting those. I think, I mean, it's not that hard really if you have the infrastructure, like the growing infrastructure to do it. All right, so great question. At Lana Fred writes, on the subject of hurricanes, what does dealing with natural disaster as a grower look like? Is it reasonable to hurricane-proof crops, pick up insurance and hope for the best? Ooh, I mean, to some extent you can insure against hurricanes, right? But it's super expensive, right? Like a hurricane, if you live in a hurricane prone area, your insurance is going to be outrageous. Anyway, just in general. So, and most years you're probably not going to get hit. So, there are probably, I would think, some sort of hurricane crop things, flood, insurance and whatnot for crop losses. That stuff is harder with mixed vegetable production. It's easier when it's just like, I plant my corn, I grow my corn, I harvest my corn, I put it in the storage silo. So it's like very clean cut to the insurer to know how much to give you for that crop. But when you're like, well, I planted 4 beds of lettuce this week, I harvested 3 beds, I also planted beets, I harvested carrots, like that stuff is super complicated to keep up with for them. So I guess you just have to talk to the insurers to know. But, dealing with a natural disaster, we've never had anything super like to the point that we needed like FEMA or anything on our farm. That obviously there are lots of those stories. And I know FEMA is not getting very well funded right now, so that's not great here in the United States. I guess it depends on where you are. But it's hard to insure in disaster prone areas. And then at the same time, the federal government's not being super helpful in that regard. So I think ideally, you're farming in a way that is just resilient as possible. I know there are fewer farms you'll find, at least like mixed vegetable farms, in those areas that are really prone to significant rainfall like that or hurricane winds, those sorts of things, because you're not likely to put up a tunnel. Like if you put up a tunnel in those areas, and you have a hurricane coming, you need to get that plastic off, and you need to just let whatever happens and tie that tunnel down, because it 70 mile per hour winds can crush a tunnel. So when you're talking about 130, 140 mile per hour winds of a hurricane, like it's just going to flatten it, rip that plastic to shred at very least. A lot of it is just going to be resilient farming methods and a lot of perennial crops, a lot of tree crops that make sense in those areas. But a lot of it is, just picking and choosing your area and the crops you grow to that climate. It's tough. I mean, some places, especially when you're on an island, like you need to grow food like that. And when you get hit, I don't know. I mean, you have to, luckily they're annual crops and you can get back into production within a few weeks. Like you can probably have something to eat within a few weeks, but it's crop farming's slow. Like even annual farming is slow. Like we're talking fastest crop we can grow is like microgreens or something. And that's a couple weeks. So, I think one of the things I saw though that I thought was interesting is maybe it was Trad Cotter did some work in Haiti after the earthquake, or I want to say that's right. I don't want to miss give the wrong name there, but I think it was Trad Cotter. But anyway, they did some work on mushroom production, because you can actually get mushrooms into production pretty fast on like cardboard. So you could have a protein effectively after disaster pretty fast. So there is some, like small scale farm production stuff that could be really interesting. And in fact, I think I have a question coming up about that specifically that I'll address more on Monday. I think Monday. But yeah, good. I mean, good questions. I think all that stuff is really important. I had, when I went down to Louisiana recently, and I maybe told this story recently, but a few years ago, I went down to Louisiana and they were just saying like, it's super hard to farm here now. So like, I don't know. I mean, they're just like, they don't feel supported. The weather is intense. It's hot in the summer. You get these, insane rainfalls. And then also you have the risk of just the occasional hurricane coming through. So I don't know. I mean, that sometimes that's just the nature of it. And we have to pick and choose where we farm and how we farm in those areas really carefully. Let's see. Grower123 asks, what are your thoughts on permaculture style water catchment as seen in Andrew Millison's videos? Is it realistic for commercial operations or only for revitalization of severely depleted soil? Yeah, I mean, I think there's like a lot of that stuff. So Andrew Millison's videos are really cool. There's a lot of good video. Like a lot of good ideas in terms of water catchment from roofs, from how they manage, like sort of redirecting ponds, a lot of like using sort of beaver style water, slowing down the water, whatever that term is. And yeah, I mean, that stuff is certainly, there's certainly ideas there that could be scaled to not just like large scale farming, but like, large scale ecological restoration. And I love that stuff. I think that, in another life, I guess that's probably what I would have studied and worked and spent some time on. And yeah, I think that, those sort of large scale restoration projects that he talks about, but even in the small ones, I think that stuff is really applicable because it's just, it's relatively cheap a lot of times. It does take some land movement. It does take some, I think the hardest stuff is honestly just working within the governments of those various countries and areas. But once you get through all those logistical issues, then yeah, I mean, the potential is huge. A lot of our issues are water management issues, and and that comes with both droughts and how I'm always thinking about the Amazon, or I've been thinking a lot about the Amazon, because I think at some point, I mean, there will be large swaths of the Amazon forest that are basically deserts by the time we pass away because of how they're being managed, right? Like when you cut all those trees out, you're the way that the moisture works in those areas, the atmospheric moisture, like you just lose rainfall. These places that don't have great soils end up drying out, and they farm them for a little while or as long as they can, and then it's just another desert. So it's really sad stuff, honestly, in that way. Water management, both through trees and just like water catchment systems, I think all that stuff is hugely important. I mean, we could dramatically change, like in the same way that we will probably see a desertification of places like the Amazon in our lifetime. We could also probably see like massive changes in weather patterns if we like made a huge concerted effort to, better manage our water out west and those sorts of things. So, I mean, absolutely, I think is the answer there. And Nick C. Grow asks, bought 11 acres with some friends that we plan to build on eventually. It's only around 20 minutes away. Fortunately, that is fortunate. 20 minutes isn't too bad. What would you do this fall? Start prepping or for gardens and / orchards, etc. Sorry, I didn't read that question very well. Sometimes it's like weird to read it on my computer. Anyway, so what would we do this fall? I mean, it depends on when you want to get into production, right? Like if you have a full year, I mean, starting in the fall is great, right? You get your gardens prepped. I'd probably go ahead and plow and get, maybe even get a cover crop in if you need to. But it depends on what you want to do with it next year. Like if you need a revenue source from it pretty soon, it complicates things, a little bit. Ideally, with any farm startup, you're taking your time. You're taking a full year maybe to get the gardens prepped, to get the beds made, the infrastructure built, the water, the electricity, the tunnels, whatever that you're going to build, get your soil amended, all those things. And then you're taking a year to, even develop your marketing, develop your plot, your crop plan, all that stuff. Like if every farm in the ideal world would take a full year to get started before it sells anything. But obviously that's not, I don't know many businesses that can just be like chill on your building for a year and not make any money. But that's like the ideal, because as soon as you start selling food or growing food, you're working on a moving train, right? So it is really hard, as my mentor used to say, it's really hard to work on a moving train. And that's the absolute truth. Like when you need to be making money is the hardest time to be building your infrastructure and all those things, because all you're focused on is like, I've got to grow these microgreens or grow these radishes, and then it turns into longer season crops, and then you're like managing all of that, and you have no time to build the wash pack out or whatever. So Yeah, I mean, in an ideal scenario, you take the full year to just get everything set, get it all together, and then you can start producing. But if you're just doing, 11 acres is a lot, so I'm assuming you're trying to do something slightly bigger. But if you're only, if you're just wanting to grow for yourself, that's a little bit of a different story. Yeah. Grower 123, I'll come back to you. I want to make sure to get everybody as much as I can. Let's see. Johnny Crash, I see what you did there, asks, what are some passive irrigation systems? I have a garden plot with only a hand-cranked water pump and no electricity. I tried using buckets to douse the water, but it is still a lot of manual labor. There's lots of different options. Like you could do tanks that are attached to, drip lines. Like you'll see some people put them on tunnels, and then basically you can just adjust how much of that water you want to come out and what time to come into the drip lines. Obviously water management, just like good mulching, good, not overly pulverizing the soil, all the things that we talk about. Yeah. And then passive options. Yeah, I mean, that's the one that comes to mind most readily. It's just like a large tank and a sort of drip setup from that. I don't know I've never tried one of those. They do exist. But yeah, I mean, that's something you just need to make sure that your pressure is right and your elevation is right. And then you have to have a way that tank actually fills up, which could be if you have a small building there that focuses all the rainwater off the roof onto it, if you are in a place that gets rain. There are like solar pumps and stuff that you could potentially use instead of a hand pump. And I mean, you're, trying to use buckets that works on a really small scale, but it's only going to get you so far. Right. So, those are probably your best options. And there are lots of little like solar or battery operated things that, could probably do the trick just depending on how much water we're talking. Like if you're having to water every day or multiple times a day, then you may need to look into a system depending on how much you're trying to water here, you may need to look into a system that is more, has a little bit more power behind it. But yeah, it's not impossible. You just have to get creative. And I'm sure there are options out there that like I'm not even aware of. I mean, people have gotten pretty creative. I think it's one of the nice things about the internet is how much people have shared and how much people have created. And you know how I feel about how some of that stuff is going with AI. I think is going to limit people's ability or desire to share stuff as much. And we may stop seeing some of these, cool ideas and stuff because there's no financial value in sharing them anymore. So that becomes, that's frustrating to me, but let's see, at the Wickershire Project writes, Tennessee 7A, half-acre clay soil. We make about 200 pounds a year of food/leaf mold compost. New land cleared. Can we add compost into holes and plant into it every year to improve the grow area? I guess it depends on what you mean by holes. Like if you did, like we'll put, let me get a drink real quick, but for instance, we'll put, like when we plant, let's say peppers or maybe even like squash is a better example. When we plant our squash, I'll get the best compost that I can. I will dig a little hole for my squash, for the squash transplant. And then I'll mix in that compost into that hole and then I'll put the transplant right in there and then I'll water it in really well just because for me, especially with something like squash, it just really, really loves a lot of fertility. I mean, I always say like that's the place that you get the best squash is in your compost pile, right? So, that to me is like the easiest way to do that without having to just like work the whole bed or whatever, especially, if I'm trying to go from one crop to another really quickly and, or if I have a crop that I'm like doing a succession, maybe I sowed radishes and then I want to plant those squash into the radishes before they're out. I'll go ahead and dig out little holes of radishes and then go ahead and put the compost in there. It's fine. Like it doesn't, you do want to, ultimately, supply the whole bed with compost, but I think doing it in little holes like that is fine, for certain instances. And then overall, eventually you'll want to continue to give the whole bed some fertility. But yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily see any problem with it. I think it's an option, right? It's a tool in the tool, but I almost said tool book. I don't think anybody has a tool book, toolbox. That's it. yeah, then I think it's definitely an option. Let's see. At Samantha Baker writes, have you ever quit farming? Would you advise someone who has been at it for 4 years, but it is starting to realize that the juice isn't worth the squeeze? Would I advise someone who has been at it to quit farming? I mean, if it's not working for you, I've never quit farming. Would I? I probably will, I guess, in some regard someday. Like I probably will I'm not a very, I don't love the business side of it. So like at some point I'm just going to stop wanting to do that part and just like grow. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think if it's not working for you, identify what about it's not working. Can you solve those issues? Is there a way that you can, work with somebody else? I think a lot of times people try this stuff on their own and it's really hard. And nobody is good at growing food, selling food, marketing, distribution, dealing with chefs, dealing with market customers. Like nobody is good at all of those things. Like that's not a thing, right? So, finding a way to maybe bring somebody else into that mix if you still love it and it's still something you want to do. Figuring out to find a way to bring in somebody or a couple people who, like those other aspects. I think, that's an option. We talk a lot about the need for more collaborative farming for that reason, because like starting a farm is like starting a small village. Like it's like a weird industry where you're starting like an entire bit. It's like starting Amazon from scratch, right? Like in your backyard. Like it's really tough to do it all by yourself, right? It's a very big business and it has so many different facets. So yeah, I mean, sometimes it's like, what is it? I guess the question would be like, what is it about farming that isn't working for you? And could it be fixed with something else? Or just like, I don't love this. It's okay to not love stuff. I mean, you can be like, I like growing food. You can just grow food. You don't have to be a farmer. I think there's a lot of, guilt that comes along with that. And I wish we would get over that culture of like, you do this right, or you do this wrong, or like that person's not a real farmer because they only farmed for 5 years, whatever. Don't worry about what other people say. Just enjoy, love what you love. Do it if it's working for you, great. If you want to keep doing it, find a way. If you don't want to keep doing it, that's fine too. Like, your mind's probably already caring about food and all these things. So maybe you can put that energy and that effort and what you learn towards something else. Like, I think all of those things are fair game. We put these weird stigmas on what we do with our lives. And like I've said in a previous episode of the podcast, like I think the average person has like 7 careers in their life. That's fine. Do whatever, just enjoy, be with your family, enjoy your life, enjoy farming, be outside as much as you can, try and treat the earth well. You'll be rewarded for it. Doesn't have to be, everything. So anyway, I don't know if I answered that question, but I tried. Thank you, Samantha. And I wish you the best on your work. Delights of the Earth writes, any tips for our first winter with chickens? We will get snow up here in Wisconsin. Yeah, that's tough. So a few things. You want to get them out of the wind and the cold as much as you can. Snow, they won't love it. Chickens tend to hate snow. You want a way for them to get out and about with. And usually what we would do is put straw or something, hay or straw or something down so they could just like walk around, because they would not. In our situation, we don't get as much snow as you all do. They would probably get used to it eventually. But here in Kentucky, they just were like, nope, not leaving the coop. So, also a lot of times what people will do is put them indoors into areas where you can kind of collect a lot of that manure. So maybe like like a tunnel, right? So you put them in a high tunnel, they'd scratch stuff up, they'd make a mess of it a little bit, but they would also fertilize it. They'd also pick out weed seeds and those sorts of things. So then you could do that. And then, move them out in the spring and then reform your beds or whatever you need to. And then you have a little bit of that fertility boom. You could put them in an area where like you have a deep mat of stuff, where they're just like, focusing the manure on wood chips or whatever. And then you're kind of mixing that together and then you have some nice compost in the spring. Can't expect to have like fresh grass and stuff for them all the time. So, a tunnel would be great, but, whatever your options are, I think just keep them safe, right? They do frostbite, that's the word. Like on their, faces and stuff. So you got to be really careful. Like once you get down to that 20-degree range, like that's when they start to get, it gets a little bit dangerous, especially if the wind is whipping through there. So, you got to treat them well, take care of your chickens. They're obnoxious, but they are great animals. Yeah, and I don't know. I think that's probably, maybe some other people have some additions to that in the chat. Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for all of these questions. Actually, I'm going to take a second. I have another ad read I have to do real quick. From our friends over there at Marble Seed. The Marble Seed Organic Farming Conference attracts a wide range of regenerative and organic farmers for 3 days of skill development and community building. Farmer Drew Kramer said, going to Marble Seed was so invigorating at a time when I needed it most. I picked up tools I'm already using. The conference is the final week in February in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Early registration opens December 4th at conference.marbleseed.org. That's conference.marbleseed.org. Cool. Let's get back to our questions here. Thanks to Marble Seed and Farmhand and all the rest for supporting this work. Let's see. I've lost my place. I'm sorry. Okay, so do you, at Sean A.L. Biston. Sometimes they're all together, so I'm not sure exactly how to divide it up. But Sean L. Biston writes, do you have any farm-to-table type cookbooks you might recommend? Maybe ones that you use at home? That's a good question. There was the one that Sean Brock did several years ago that I'm forgetting the name of right now that I thought was really good. The best, I mean, honestly, I don't do a lot of like farm-to-table cookbook stuff, but the one... the best cooking anything, in my opinion, is J. Kenji Lopez Alt. Like, all the Food Lab stuff, it's just all the time the best. Any like recipe you need, just go to Serious Eats or get that Food Lab. Like, all of those recipes are spot on. Like, I've never had one fail. They're so good. And they're so simple. Like, even just the hollandaise sauce recipe, like super simple hollandaise, super simple risotto, all the things. Like, anytime you need a good, very simplified, effective recipe, just J. Kenji Lopez Alt for the win. Yeah, so that's where I would go with that. I don't know that it's really like farm to table-y, but yeah, there was the Vittles book that came out several years ago. I really liked that one too. And yeah, this one, some of these I don't prepare for, so I'm having to come up with them on the fly. I don't know. There's got to be at least one that's like eluding me right now. We haven't been doing a lot of recipes, but now that it's the winter, I was actually thinking today that I want to make some pizza dough and then get started doing my fresh pastas for the winter. So we'll probably have some recipe stuff coming up here soon, and it's November, right? So we got to start talking about some like Thanksgiving recipes. Maybe I think my next live actually will be like the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Maybe we should do like a cooking live. You all can tell me what you think of that. I don't know that I'll be like in the kitchen. Maybe I could get Mike to do that. I don't know. Or probably not. That would be a mess. But yeah, we could do a live, like, sort of Thanksgiving episode. All right. So let's see. Yeah, thank you for that question. At Nova Indoor with 2 O's. Will you be making any classic outside farming videos in the near future? Maybe. I mean, the problem with the outside the super, old school no-till growers videos. One, I've done them all, really. Like, at this point, like, I've done everything that would make sense as a video like that for the amount of work they take. And it just, like, the revenue on YouTube across the board is just diving. Like, it's not a thing anymore. It is, I mean, you can still make money from it, right? And we're still making money from YouTube ad revenue, but like, for the amount of work those took and take, it has to be something that people are going to watch, right? So it would have to be within a realm of certain videos, so that people would actually click on it and watch it, and then we could make some of the money back. We never made all of our money back on producing it. This is a huge, it's really, even though it's a small operation, it's an expensive operation. But like, we wouldn't, basically those videos don't make very much money anymore. And to do to branch out and do the more nuanced stuff, like, those videos would make even less. So yeah, it's just, the landscape of sort of farm videos have changed a lot. And a lot of that has to do with TikTok. It's increasingly having to do with AI, and just like the information that you want is readily available without you having to, and fair, like, without having to watch a whole video about it. And I think that's, I'm not saying we'll rule them out entirely. Like, I may occasionally do a video when I'm like, oh, this would be a really cool video to do, just outside full normal. But one thing is, I was missing some equipment that I had to get some equipment, some camera equipment to be able to do more videos outside. So what we're hoping to do, what Mike and I have already kind of talked about, is doing more like longer B-roll sections outside in the spring when there's not much to film here right now. But that way, even when it's just me like sitting in my room talking, that you all get to see a longer version of what I'm actually doing and talking about. That was hard this year only because I'm trying to figure out how to do this show. But next year, now that we've kind of gotten in a rhythm, I think we can do more of that. So in theory, to kind of answer your question, no, but yes, like there would be almost every video would be every day would be like a version of that, 3 different versions of that. Hope, to some extent, to the extent that we could, because sometimes I try not to make the show too overly like just me ranting about farming, talking about farming. I try and break it up with a little bit of like farm adjacent stuff. And just because I don't think anybody can just take on nonstop farming information all the time. But sometimes I think also trying to break it up with visual stuff is going to be helpful. So yeah, that's the goal. But I don't think that we'll really return to like classic Farmer Jesse videos, only because it's just the value's not there anymore for us, unfortunately. And that's just the nature of it, unless we want to make short form videos. And even that is kind of, getting questionable. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, not at the moment, but yeah, thank you. It's a good question. At Sean ID7, I think it's just a bunch of letters and numbers. Somewhat an urbanism question. Any opinion on urban growth boundary zones? A clear defined cutoff between city and rural, cut down urban sprawl and saving farmland. I mean, without really like knowing what has been proposed in such proposals, I'm all for just like, why are we expanding into farmland when we have all this unused urban zones? Like, absolutely, let's figure it out, because that's especially, and this is something I'm going to talk about this Friday. I think is on my schedule for Friday. Just about we're losing a lot of farmland to manufacturing, to data centers, and to urbanization. And the reality is, like, we have a lot of space already developed that we don't need more. We don't need to give up more farmland for these things. If we want them, put them where there's space already that's already developed that we can't use for farmland. So yeah, I mean, in general, without like endorsing one in particular, because I've not seen any, that yeah, I'm like all for it. I think it's utterly insane that we are like, well, for instance, there was like a Kroger, right? It's a grocery store here, that was built right across the street from the old Kroger on a beautiful piece of farmland in Versailles, Kentucky. And I was just like, really? Is that necessary? You couldn't just like tear the old Kroger down and rebuild it, or build on top of it, or build around it, or you couldn't figure something out. But it's just, for them, it's cheaper, right? Or it's ultimately like you can make it bears out over time because you can make it more efficient. But like, too bad, I think it has to be at some point. We have to be like tough, So that's my feeling, is like, we got to stop sacrificing our farmland, because it's not unlimited, right? Like, once you have a bunch of concrete and chemicals and like all the things that come with urbanization down, there's no reclaiming it, really, like not within our lifetimes. So that's an unbelievable thing that we allow to happen. Like, it does at some point have to stop. So good question. Yeah, getting me fired up over here. All right, so let's see. Again, Grower, I'll get back to you here shortly. Oh, a super chat from Blue Raver, who asks, how fast is fall garlic? I put in 6 inches deep, and it is 2 to 3 inches above the surface in 7 days. You must be in a slightly warmer climate. If it's growing that fast, I'm going to guess you're in a slightly warmer climate, but it shouldn't really be that tall yet. It's not probably going to be a big deal since you planted it so deep, but you want it to be that like 2 to 3 inches tall going into your first hard frosts is fine. Like, you don't want it to be a whole lot taller than that. I don't know. I've had it pretty tall going into the frost just from like one December. It was like 70 degrees on Christmas. And it was that year, everything was like just still continuing to grow. I was a little bit worried about that. But I think all the garlic did fine. So it depends on the variety, maybe. Depends on how tall it is. And it depends on, I think that depth will help, because even if it gets a little fried, it'll probably recover from that. How fast is it? Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be. Yeah, it shouldn't be that tall, that fast. But like I said, maybe it went into pretty warm soil, and that will do it. So yeah, great question. Let's see at Daniel Luzin. Had a bed of peas and oats going for 2 months now, with the plan being to crimp it, add manure and compost on top, broad fork, plant garlic, cover with leaves. Any reason this might be a bad call? I don't know, not necessarily. I just think it's going to be hard to. The only thing that comes to mind is it may be hard to get that garlic in there, but it depends on how much space you're doing. You could do it. I don't necessarily see a problem with it. This is kind of why, though, I talked about wanting to plant your peas and oats and then like a couple weeks later plant your garlic, because you can still see where you can plant the garlic in the rows, and you can put it right into a row without having to move the mulch aside and then pop the garlic in. But in general, no, I don't see a problem with that. And then you said add manure and compost on top. So if you're talking like enough for it to be super thick, then the compost and mulch on top, then I don't see any problem with that. We did one year where we laid like hay down and then covered that with really deep compost, and then put garlic into that compost, and it did great. We had awesome garlic that year. So I don't see any issues with that. No, you should be fine. Is it possible to only use compost, cover crops, and JMS for fertility management? Yeah, to some extent. I mean, there could be issues like, you could run into specific nutritional issues over time. Depends on the quality of the compost, right? Like if you're just using like compost, then yeah, it's probably not ideal. But yeah, and it also depends a little bit on what crops you're growing. But for the most part, yes. And if you see an issue, then you would just address it. So, but compost is a pretty diverse, depending on what's used in the compost and how well it's made, like it's a pretty diverse product. So, yeah, so that shouldn't be a huge issue. And yeah. Let's see at Yeshua Reloaded. I'm not sure. Plant your potted blueberries now? ? You usually want to wait till they're dormant. So if they're dormant, then I think it's okay. For us, we have potted blueberries that are just chilling, so I'm waiting for them to go dormant, and then we'll plant them this fall. Planting in the fall is good, though. Like, you want that moisture. For us, like, it's really, well, I'm assuming you're in the fall there. You can plant it in the spring, too. It's just moisture for us. Like, our springs can get dry fast, so my preference is to plant all those perennial things, like, over the winter. And then that way they're, well watered in by the spring, and they tend to do pretty well. But you want to wait till they're dormant. So basically once the leaves are done and it chills out a little bit. All right, I know I missed, let me get one. Jared James asks, I'm prepping a new plot on my farm, 8B9A. I'm planning on sweet corn in summer and onions and potatoes over winter. I've never grown potatoes. Any advice for potatoes during winter? I'm planning on sweet corn for summer and onions and potatoes over winter. I don't know about overwintering potatoes. I mean, they survive in the winter. I would just wait until the spring. I don't know that there's like a need to plant them in the winter. Onions, if you can do, I mean, I guess it's just a bit, you said you're an 8B9A. I guess I don't see any reason not to if you're in that warm of a climate. I've just never done it, so I don't really want to advise like one way or the other. We've done as early as, I think we did February planting of potatoes in the tunnel once, and it did fine. It wasn't the best yield, but we didn't have any pest issues. And I think part of that yield was that it was experimental. So we were just using old potatoes. So I wasn't using like seed potatoes. But that's my recollection of it. I'd probably have to find some notes on it. It was a long time ago. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. I don't necessarily see a problem with it, but really what you want is like when that sunlight starts to come back, you want, a good plant to be able to absorb as much of that as possible. And then you're going to get, your biggest potatoes there when the sun's like at, its peak. So I mean, it's probably possible. So, maybe if you do it, just start small, try a couple small trials and then just see how it goes. Try a couple different varieties. I'm not sure if you would use a longer or shorter season one in that case. Maybe a shorter season one. I'm not sure. But yeah, let's see at Orgates Market Garden, Manor Gates. There we go. Manor Gates Market Garden, because it's all strung together. It's like hard to read. It's hard to ever know. Do you think these little silica packets would cure the inevitable moisture buildup in plastic packages products? Salad mix is very challenging to keep, period. You mean those little silica packets. I don't know what the food safety element of those are. I mean, I know they put them in like beef jerky packets and stuff. Gosh, I don't know. That's one I could not say, but I've had that thought before. What was the crop? I was like, man, I really want to suck the moisture out of these. There was something this year that I was having that thought about, where I was like, it would be really great. Oh, basil. Our problem with basil here is it's so humid. It just never wants to be dry enough. So I was always like, I want to put like a little silica packet in there with them. I haven't explored that though. I don't know. You'd have to read up on like the food safety element of that. I'm not 100% on that, but obviously they do put it with things like beef jerky. So maybe there's some food safety, concern, diminishment there, but I don't know that you would be able to afford putting it in with like all your lettuce. We sell, like if we're doing small bags, we're talking like at a farmer's market level, we're talking hundreds of those like in a weekend or whatever. So, I don't know that the price of that silica packet would make sense entirely. And also it's probably just a thing that ends up in the trash. So it's just another thing. So probably not necessary for salad mix, but maybe there's a crop like basil that it could come in handy for. And let's see. Hold on, I want to get, okay. At Nick and Brittany Fuller, right? My friend stopped using well water that got sodium contamination as soon as they noticed it. They are trying to get the salt out of the soil before next year's growing season, Zone 5A. Any tips? Yeah, I mean, salt is a lot of times what's recommended for salt, I think, is just like a water leaching. What do they call it? Soaking it with water, like, basically just leaching the salts out. That's why like a lot of times, you get salt buildups in things like conventionally run tunnels, and sometimes ones with like heavy compost applications. And a lot of times they're like, just take the plastic off and let it rain on it a few times. That's generally the recommendation. I don't have any advice beyond that, because I think you're going to, it's going to be there unless you do something to wash it out. And, that like, as far as I know, that's the best, that's what you typically hear. I'm not an agronomist though, so I don't know like if there are alternative options for maybe like doing like a salt tolerant. There are like salt tolerant cover crops. There are that you could maybe grow that and it would absorb some of that salt, or maybe like stuff like that. So there may be other options out there that I'm not aware of. I know but yeah, it's a good question. I'm going to go up here and see. I know I skipped one of grower 123's questions. Grower 123 asks also, how realistic is using compost to heat a greenhouse or heat greenhouses? It's not impossible, right? But you're talking about a lot of gases that come out, so you have to be very careful with it. I've had friends that have used compost on the outside of their tunnels to warm like barrels inside of their tunnels. And so basically like the transfer of heat from the compost pile to the barrels, the water barrels in the tunnel, kind of like heats the tunnel a little bit, or at least like stabilizes it. So that could be an option. I've also had friends who said they, did composting in their tunnel and it killed all of their tomatoes, because it just like, CO2 or methane or whatever it was releasing was so intense. And then also you hear these stories of people doing stuff like that, walking into the tunnel and then getting like poisoned by the amount of carbon monoxide or whatever it is that's created there. So yeah, I think like if you do it, you got to do it really safely. And I think small amounts are probably fine. But you just got to make sure there's proper ventilation, for the gases. The heat should be retained pretty easily, but yeah. Passive heating of tunnels in that way, yeah, it's kind of complicated, to be honest. The barrels, I'm going to talk about, actually somebody asked a question about this, but the barrels are, yeah, the barrels, like water barrels and stuff like that, are a good idea as long as you keep that tunnel closed all winter. Now we've had the issue where it does end up somewhat feeling like it keeps the tunnel cooler in the spring because that mass is so cold going into the hotter period. So it takes a while for it to like start warming up. So that can be an issue, but yeah, for me, I'd probably just stay with the simplified version. That to me is just a safer version than trying to compost inside of your tunnel, or maybe just like compost next to your tunnel. And then there's also like piping options. Like I've heard of people putting pipes from their compost piles into their tunnels. That seems maybe like an option. I don't know. Could also be could also end up with the gas situation there too. So I don't know. And then I think you asked another one. What do you think about the potential of vertical farming, intensive controlled environment agriculture? It has been extremely successful in some markets, yet entirely failed in others. I mean, it's kind of a different thing, right? Like when you get into controlled agriculture, especially like hydroponics and that sort of stuff, you're talking chemistry and not biology so much. Like there's certainly biology there, but like it's really about managing your pH and your water and your nutrients and those sorts of things. And that's fine. I don't know. It doesn't interest me. Like I think all that stuff is interesting, and I'm like impressed with what people have been able to do with it. And I think to some extent it may be a necessity. And like I said, we're losing a lot of farmland right now. So, I think it's cool to have those skills. I think it's cool to have those options. There may be some, but like they're power intensive, water intensive, even, I know they're recycling some of this stuff and it's creating a lot of oxygen, but you're also, like oftentimes, like having to create excess carbon dioxide just to feed them and stuff. So it's like, I don't know, it's kind of a weird, not my favorite thing, but I think there's options there that could be cool. Especially like if you're trying to maximize your space on like an urban setting and you just don't have a lot of space and you need to set up some racks with microgreens or something on them. Or if you, if you want some sort of hydroponic system for growing a specific crop, I'm okay with that. I just think, on a larger scale that like there are other options. And then not a question, but they asked, but Danil Luzin, sorry, said a cooking episode does indeed sound awesome. Cool. All right, I will take one more question. Yeah, I think a cooking show does sound awesome. So take the last question. Whoever gets it in gets it. But I think a cooking episode does sound fun. I hesitate to go too far in one direction. Like I could do more cooking episodes. I could do more recipe stuff, and I love that, but I don't want to like overdo it. But yeah, maybe I feel like November we'll make it we'll give it more of a spin in that direction. Otherwise, if there's no more questions, Mike, then let's see. I think we're good then. All right. We did them all. We got all the questions. Oh, wait, somebody got one more in. I see this here. What is the average airspeed velocity of a coconut-laden swallow? I'm going to guess 10. 10. Yeah. One more. Joy of Gardening Home asks, and somebody put in a Go Albion. I'm looking at the chat now. I haven't seen it yet. Yes, Delights of the Earth. Yeah, Go Albion. Let's go. That's today at 3:45, so you'll know what I'm doing this afternoon is rooting on my seagulls. Joy of the Garden Home writes, Joy of the Garden and Home writes, in your retirement age, can you compile your short stories in series, please? That's a good question. I probably should, I guess, at some point compile them. I don't know. I just come up with them every week, and then they'll probably just keep going like that forever. Somebody can probably compile them. I don't put a ton of work into them, so it's not like, I think they're fun, but it's not like I'm sitting around thinking, oh man, I need to make sure I remember that one, because oftentimes I'm just kind of coming up with them a little bit on the fly, but I enjoy them. I love making them. And I think that sort of ethereal, whatever nature of them is kind of what makes them fun. So yeah, maybe anyway, I appreciate you all. I will, I think we're going to call it a show, and you all get your recipes ready to tell me about next month. Maybe we'll have you all send those to Farmer Mike at no-tillgrowers.com with your 20-second videos. Next month we'll do some recipes, and you can talk about taking your garden stuff to your kitchen. But I guess I'll probably end it where I always end it. Don't forget, No Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. That's true. If you have a end of the year, donation you need to make to cut down on your taxes a little bit, you can do that to No Till Growers. There's info about how to do that in the show notes, or there will be. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. Yeah, like this live. That's helpful to us. That's also an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor this show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music that you hear at the top of every show, and Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music you would usually hear at this moment. Pick up a hat. You can see this hat that I've got on, or this one. These will be going on the site soon. I don't know if we've got them up there just yet, but they're fun. Soil Nerd hats. Also, the other ones that we showed you last month. So yeah, you can do that at notillgrowers.com to support our work, as well as pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook. Those are very helpful things to do. And then big thank you to everyone over at notillgrowers.com or patreon.com/notillgrowers. We will return to our shouts tomorrow. Thanks for watching and listening. We'll see you tomorrow. That sounds good. Thursday. It'll be awesome. Thanks you all. Bye.